Hi there, welcome back to another episode of the EcoSend podcast. I'm your host James, and I'm thrilled to have another amazing show for you today. Today I am speaking with Sophie Zienkiewicz, and I'm so excited for today's show because this is going to be a topic, that I know very little about. All I know is I like going on holiday. I think we all like going on holiday. Usually going on holiday involves flying. And Sophie is changing the world of aviation for the better. Sophie is the co-founder of Carbon Neutral Fuels, which might be an indication of Sophie's impact on our holidays. Sophie, I'm thrilled to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Hey, James. I'm really good. Lovely to be here.
Amazing. It's great to have you on the show. I'm so excited to tuck into this topic. I know you got a background in all things chemistry, all things subjects that I have very, very little expertise on. So I'm going to be asking you probably the most basic questions you've been asked all year. But
brilliant.
I'm so interested to dive into this. So maybe, Sophie, it'd be great in your own words, like, what are you working on at the moment? What is Carbon Neutral Fuels?
Sure thing. And yes, that's a big question. So Carbon Neutral Fuels, we are decarbonising aviation. And what that means is we felt like we had something to offer the aviation industry and have a real impact on climate change. And what we wanted to do was decarbonise the fuel itself. So we essentially take atmospheric carbon dioxide and waste carbon dioxide, and we combine that with clean hydrogen, all using renewable low carbon electricity. And then we ultimately output sustainable aviation fuel. So it means that when you fly to those lovely destinations on your holiday, you can do it guilt-free and feeling good about the impact you're having on climate change.
That sounds amazing. That doesn't just sound amazing, that sounds almost too good to be true. Like this, we all think of air travel as being like one of the worst things, individually that we do in terms of our environmental impact. So genuinely, this sounds too good to be true. I'm amazed that this is even possible. So I'm curious, maybe before we dive too much more into carbon neutral fuels, just understand, how the heck have you ended up doing this? How have you got to a point where you're tackling such a mega challenge?
Sure, yes. And just on the first point, it's not necessarily even just your travel emissions, it's all of the logistics and the transport and the cargo. So when you order that thing on Amazon, it most likely is being flown over. So it's a bigger problem than sometimes we even appreciate.
Yeah.
And I actually met my co-founder Alistair Lumsden at COP26. Which was really exciting. So that was the Conference of the Parties, and it's essentially the world's largest climate change conference, and it happens every year in a different location. And in 2021, it was in Glasgow. And if you remember, that was in the COVID times, and it was a real, it was everywhere. It was all on the news. Everyone was involved in it. And it was super exciting because the previous year, I and a bunch of other enthusiastic early career individuals in the nuclear industry were going, how can we as a team contribute to climate change and solving those issues? And so we, as part of the Young Generation Network, which is the membership organisation for early career individuals in the nuclear industry, set up a delivery team. And we were like, right, let's all get together and decide what we're going to do. And we basically spent 15 months planning a bunch of activities that would happen at COP26 and show nuclear's role in the climate emergency and how it could play a positive part of that. And we did amazing stuff, James. It was so cool. We did a flash mob. One of our team...
Really?
Yeah, it was so cool. One of our team, Vicky, she wrote a song to Bonnie Tyler's I Need a Hero, and we changed it to We Need Net Zero, and it was awesome. You can find it somewhere on YouTube. It was great.
Okay, we definitely got to find that and put that in the notes.
And it was just such a phenomenal experience of seeing what young people can do when we get together and we think creatively about solving these challenges. And I was really lucky to meet Alistair at COP26. And I remember we went for a dinner and there was a whole group of us, big long table, and we were chatting about business and about having an impact and all of this sort of thing. And he'd sold his business a few months previously, and so was looking for the next challenge. And that was in the November. And the following summer, got a message out the blue saying, hey, I've got this idea. Do you want to give it a go? And that really genuinely was the origin story of CNF. So it really came from an idea that we've just then ran with.
So kind of right time, right place, but also
100%.
a lot of hard work getting to that point. I mean, no one just lands in the world of nuclear energy without doing quite a lot of hard work as well, I'm sure.
That's true. I will credit the degree in chemistry for sure for part of that.
That's incredible. And so was there, I mean, I always ask people this as well, like, for you yourself, Sophie, was there any specific moment that made you even more passionate about climate change itself? Like, for some people it's some sort of life event or realization. Was there anything like that? Or was it just something you kind of have always cared about?
It is certainly something I've always been conscious of. And I suppose I've cared about it in varying degrees as you grow up. I don't know if you ever had those CGP revision books when you were a kid.
Yes, I did have them. They were my favourite.
I would not have gone. Favourite.
I don't think I'd have passed a single exam without them.
No. When you turn to the back and you had the little quote on the back, it's amazing.
We'll have to link that in the show notes as well, just for anyone who is not aware of the wonder of a CGP textbook.
And I feel like you're always conscious of those things as you pass through exams and you grow up. So I think climate change is always a thing. But it was actually an event or a conversation, in fact, that happened at COP with one of the other members, a lovely, wonderful, passionate woman called Alice. And she grew up in Brazil, and she was talking about how representation of women in the climate emergency is actually very underrepresented in her communities. And it was such a moment of, actually, I care about it in my little bubble, but I have to care about it for a larger bubble, and it's so important that we open our eyes and we recognize that we're not just doing it for us. And it was such a pivotal moment of, hey, if you can think big, then big might actually happen.
Yeah. Oh, that's so inspiring. Like, I think we're so used to I don't know, I think in my world, like, I'm so used to hearing a lot of big tech companies in Silicon Valley thinking big and, how do we build the biggest social network or whatever. And to hear, people thinking like that in the world of climate and even more so like in the UK, I think it's all too rare that I hear that kind of message. It's very inspiring to hear that as just on so many levels. I love it.
Well, you've got a big mission yourself. I think they're all around. We just got to find them.
Best. Yeah. You got to find them. That's it. I'm keen to dig in then a little bit on the problem that you're solving, because as you said, there's a lot of, I guess there's a lot of planes out there doing a lot of different things. A lot of the world moves around via planes. So, like, how big is this problem? Like, what is its contribution to climate change in some terms? And let's maybe start there before we then dig into how the heck you're solving it.
So, yes, aviation contributes between 2 and 4% of global emissions. So it is a considerable one. And some people might say, well, actually, that's quite a small percentage. But as our population increases and as our connectivity increases, that will only ever increase. So it's very important that we catch it at this point and we do something about it. And you referenced traveling from Heathrow to New York, for instance, typically emits 2 tons of CO2 of carbon dioxide equivalents. And the average person's equivalence in the UK is typically about 5.4 tons of CO2 per year. So if you think one trip is a huge percentage of that allowable, if still too high, amount of CO2. So if you're traveling for business a couple of times a year, or you've got family coming to visit you, or you're going on a couple of holidays, which is all totally amazing things and things that we should be doing because they're great fun and they're important and it's great to feel connected. But we have to think about, well, actually that one trip is such a big impact. So why wouldn't we try and tackle the fuel and the causes for that?
Yeah, that's I don't want to geek out too much on numbers, but I also just want to make sure I understand it, Sophie, because I think sometimes in the world of climate, like there's so many numbers banded around. When you say, or when anyone says like a plane trip return is, what were you saying, 2 tons?
Yeah.
Is that like the whole plane, or is that the plane divided up by the number of passengers and that's my contribution there? I'm curious, like how do those numbers even get calculated? Because I just wanted to double check that.
No, that's a really good point. There's a great website which we can maybe link in the footnotes of this episode, and that calculates your emissions travelled. So my understanding is that is for your personal emission set.
Right.
So that's a third of what you are contributing. And so, if you imagine a couple of hundred seats on a plane, it's an awful lot of emissions.
Yeah, so the actual plane is not just a few tons, not just a few tons. It's a seriously large amount per plane.
It is. And that's because the fuel that the plane is flying on, and there are other factors that influence it, but predominantly the fuel that it's flying on is kerosene, and kerosene is a long chain hydrocarbon, and the hydrocarbons come from dinosaurs plus time, essentially.
Dinosaurs plus time. That's the title of this show, that's for sure.
But that's the sort of crux of the fuel. So if you're digging up embedded carbon as a liquid fuel and then burning it, that's thousands, millions of years old. And that's why it's so important that we can carry on and we can get this message across that you can carry on flying and you can carry on living the life, because we've got the technology now to be able to replace that fuel in a sustainable way.
Yeah, I think that's that touches on, I think, such a good point on this whole topic, which is because I think, a lot of people sort of, again, it's one of these challenges whenever you talk about climate, like there's so many possible solutions of different degrees of complexity to certain things. And I think a lot of people sort of hear aviation contributes 2 to 4% of emissions. Well, flying is bad. And actually, what you're proposing is, no, it's not flying that is the bad thing. Like inherently, we could fly... birds fly around. They don't use they don't use kerosene. So like it's not the flying itself. We don't have to stop flying. We've got to sort out why flying is bad for the climate, and a big part of that is the fuel. And that's what you're saying, rather than we all need to learn to sail. Which, not that would be a terrible thing.
Yeah, also a good pastime. No,
but it might take a little bit longer to get to, New York.
Exactly that. I really strongly believe that we have the technologies available to us. It's a case of lining everything up in terms of regulation and in terms of price and in terms of scaling and supply chains and all of those things. And that takes time. And whilst I'm really optimistic, I don't think we're quite there yet in terms of being the best thing that we can be as an industry, but I'm really confident that we will get there, because there are so many clever people working on this, and the incentives in terms of governments, not just in the UK. We have this thing called the SAF mandate. In Europe, they've got the European mandate, and it really is a global incentive to encourage the use of sustainable aviation fuel. So it's coming from governments. Airlines really want it. You'll see, if you just search sort of offtake agreements from airlines, there's a bunch of them that come up in the news with airlines going, look, we really want to use this sustainable fuel. And the fuel suppliers saying, hey, yeah, we'd love it. There's just not currently the supply available. So everyone's really keen. I think it might just take a bit more time to get there.
Yeah, so I'm so intrigued to hear more about this part of the journey then, because clearly we've got this massive problem, and it sounds like you're actually really quite far along on this journey of solving the actual how we create this fuel to solve this. So I'm curious. You mentioned a lot of big words that are sciencey, and I'm not even going to try and repeat them. All I know is you've done a lot of science. So it sounds like, though, there's a lot of non-science that is actually now the big barrier. Or maybe I'm oversimplifying. I'm definitely oversimplifying. But tell me about the other challenges you're facing then of trying to go from where we are today, which is, I assume, basically no planes, or basically almost all planes flying with kerosene, to a wonderful world where they're using carbon neutral fuels.
That's the dream. The dream. Yeah. So, and I think, firstly, there's absolutely nothing wrong with making it simple, actually. I mean, I think where a lot of science communications falls down is that we do use a lot of long words, and we do try and make it this austere thing. And obviously that's not everyone, but yeah, sometimes it is just, hey, we take CO2 and we make fuel, and that's okay.
So yeah, sometimes a moron like me needs to actually understand it, you know?
I would never use that word. Never. But in terms of other challenges, yeah, so you mentioned that regulation is a big thing. And up until now, well, actually, it came into force in the UK on the 1st of January 2025. So we're 2 months into this regulation being law, actually. And it states that from now, there are increasing percentages of sustainable fuel that need to be used. And the sort of big target that the industry is currently working towards is 10% SAF, and SAF is Sustainable Aviation Fuel. So 10% SAF by 2030. And we're currently hovering at about 0.5% in terms of supply. So we've started.
Yeah.
We haven't quite got there just yet. And within that, there's different types of SAF that you can have. So you can have biofuel SAF, for instance, which is where you take crops and you take organic matter and you can create fuel. You can take power to liquid SAF, which is what we do. And that's using electricity to create your sustainable fuel out the other side, and that wastes CO2 as part of that. So that is a big hurdle, actually, and a big challenge that has recently been overcome in terms of we've got that legislation now, and Europe and the rest of the world have got similar. But then the next biggest challenge is financing the production of these and the construction of these facilities. They are big, big, big projects. And for a startup like us, that's going to be a really interesting challenge when we get there, because we don't have a balance sheet that we can refer to or a parent organisation that will cover the cost. So we're having to think quite laterally about how we go out and build these things. But in terms of other companies, it's you take this thing called FID, which is financial investment decision. And it essentially is like the go, no-go point. So you've done all your design work and you've got all your list of equipment, you've got your heads of terms agreed with your sites, everything's ready to go. And then it's essentially, are we actually going to do this project? And a lot of the industry has got to that point. But because there aren't the billions of pounds available to actually build these facilities, it's kind of stagnated a bit. So funding is a real challenge.
That is. I'm also just trying to imagine, because this is so far from my zone of expertise. I'm just trying to imagine a facility like this, because I don't spend my days actually walking around airline fuel.
You're joking? I thought everyone did that. What?
What are we talking? Where does one build one of these, and what does it look like? Is it maybe like a massive factory? I don't know. What do you need to build?
That's such a lovely question. Yeah. So if you imagine when you start out construction, you're going to have a big field. We're talking tens of acres worth of space. Yeah. So big field. And you have to have that field industrially zoned, which essentially means that you can build a thing on it. So you can't just go and build this in the middle of Manchester, for instance. It has to be in a specific location. And because you're dealing with fuels, there is a bunch of safety elements that need to be considered as part of that, which is all fine, and something that we've, as a sector, have been doing for tens of hundreds of years, probably. So yeah, very much okay with that. But then actual facility wise, we've got, you'll have a substation, which is where your electricity connection comes into, and that will power your whole facility. You'll likely have a bunch of columns, which can be sort of 20 to 40 meters high sometimes. And that's where your fractionation of the fuel will happen. So where you actually decide what you're going to output as a product. We've got, for instance, on ours, direct air capture units, which if you imagine 3 40-foot shipping containers stacked on one another, and then at the top, there's a bunch of fans that whir around and they suck in the air. And then that's where you get your CO2, part of your CO2 from.
Got it.
So, yeah, I mean, if you head over to our LinkedIn, actually, we've got a photo of what our facility will look like on there.
Amazing.
So, yeah, that would be the best place to go. But, think big construction.
Yeah. So you've got the plans.
We do.
Got the plans.
Yes.
So if I'm imagining this as an episode of Grand Designs, we're right at the start. We've got Kevin asking if this is a good idea.
Yeah, he's raising his eyebrows at the budget. Absolutely.
And you think this will cost £500?
Yeah. That's exactly it. So we used the government. We used the government. What I mean to say is we won a government grant to help us with the designs of this facility.
That's good to hear.
So, so we are very much at the beginning of that journey, and we work with an amazing engineering firm called IO Consulting, and they have supported us in and led on the design work for the facility. And it essentially means talking to a bunch of vendors and saying, you can go into so much detail, James, honestly, it will be like how I'm using a 3 mil diameter pipe. Oh my gosh, well, I'm using a 4. What are we going to do about that? And then you have a big chat about it. And
this feels like a much bigger deal than whether the windows will fit.
Yes, 100%. So we are currently in that design phase, but we do have preliminary drawings of what it will be. And I remember actually a few months ago, we got given the first layout design drawing. And you open this PDF and it's just a bunch of rectangles and circles on an A4 piece of paper. And I got so excited. Honestly, it was the biggest day going, oh my gosh, that's our rectangle. Wow.
That's amazing. So, it sounds like things are getting more and more real. So you've got, and like, how does the timeline look? Am I right in saying you're aiming for 2030? Is that right?
That's right.
To be live? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So we have the final few design stages to go through, and then we will aim to take that final investment decision that I mentioned previously. We'll aim to take that within the next 2 or 3 years, and then it will be constructing the thing. And then my goal is that in the 2030s, whoever the Prime Minister is flying on our fuel.
Oh wow, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Truly.
That's incredible. This is so exciting. So what are you so at the moment then, Sophie, what do you need? You're doing, I mean, looking to the future, clearly there's loads, you've got a long to-do list and lots of things to achieve. You're doing a fundraising campaign at the moment, is that right?
We are. Yes, we are. So we have launched a crowdfund, and that's hosted on Crowdcube. So if you head over to that website, we might still be live by the time this goes out.
Yeah, we will definitely link to that.
Great,
in the notes,
thank you.
Yeah.
So that's really exciting actually, because we are happy to be challenged, but as far as I'm aware, we are the only SAF company that has ever listed their organisation publicly. So it's a great opportunity for everybody to get involved and really, support this mission, but also have a stake in what the future of fuel is going to be. So that's currently live, and that's it's a big milestone for us. We started out 2 years ago going, wow, wouldn't it be really cool to do a crowdfund in the future? And then a couple of months ago, we thought, should we just do it and we'll see what happens? And the response has been really awesome. And I'm just really thrilled that we get to operate as a startup a little bit differently to traditional companies actually, and go, do you know what, we are going to do this cool thing and we are going to invite everyone in and see where we get to. So
This is very exciting. I mean, I'm sure many people listening to the podcast, they're always keen to hear about all the cool stuff people are doing in the world of sustainability and environment, climate. So rarely is there an opportunity to sort of be financially involved, and I guess, you know, I by the way, this is no financial advice. I'm no investment advisor, but like I think that's such a wonderful thing, because so much of the time we do, like, there needs to be more money going into some of these projects. I mean, I look at the things I've backed on Crowdcube. I think I've backed a total of 2 things. One was a startup bank, and one was a burrito chain. So I'm hoping that this
that's a diverse portfolio, James.
Yeah, it's very, very diverse. But I think this one might have a little bit more meaning, you know. So I'm very excited to go check it out, and I'm wishing you the very best on this crowdfunding, because I've heard from a lot of people it's not the easiest thing to do, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that I hope there's a lot of people lining up very keen to support what you're doing.
Yeah, well, we certainly have had a good response, and Alistair and I really take seriously the culture that we're trying to create at CNF as well, and that extends to everyone that supports us. We feel like it's such a responsibility, actually. Firstly, the bigger picture of being part of the solution to climate change, but also it's a responsibility to create that ethos of, yes, we can do it, and yes, we're going to do the right thing. So we've really tried to instill that. So I hope that that's a message that your listeners and that everyone can get on board with.
Yeah, 100%. The only other thing I'd say on this is also, I think there's something wonderful when you make a commitment, like doing something like this crowdfunding, where you involve a lot more people, and it almost pushes transparency as a really key thing from early days. And I think that's also, just from everything I've sort of seen, it's like anything in the world of climate and sustainability, like trust comes from that transparency, and I think that perhaps is also a really big deal here.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, it absolutely is. Firstly, just I haven't got the headspace to be keeping secrets.
Yeah.
I just don't know how people do it. It's exhausting.
It's a lot easier to just tell the truth.
It is. And I totally agree. I just feel like, so I used to work for a wonderful company, which again I would encourage everyone to go and look up, called Better Not Stop, run by the phenomenal Hannah Cox.
Yes, we love Hannah.
We do love Hannah. She's great. And I feel like I really learned that from her, actually. Just the idea that that doing your best is always good enough. Yeah. That's all you can do, and that's all you can offer. And if you create that environment for people that you engage with, then that will just be enough. And and I think you're right in terms of transparency. It is really important that we are all custodians of the world, and we're all trying to do right by it. And sometimes people come at that from different places, and you sort of have to meet in the middle sometimes, and it's not maybe quite what you always wanted, and the decisions that are made are not quite the right ones in your view. But I feel like if we all just try our best, that's all we can do.
Here. I think that is wonderful. A wonderful thought to end on, I think, Sophie. I mean, I know you had maybe one piece of advice you feel that maybe you wanted to share. I know you always...
Yes.
It's always... I mean, you've already shared... If there's anyone listening to this and they are not inspired or motivated to go do something, even if it's to just, drop some money into the crowdfunding campaign, then I don't know. They've probably been listening on the wrong speed to this episode or something. I don't know.
That must be it. Absolutely. Well, that's really kind. And my final 2 bits, one slightly more flippant than the other, perhaps, but if Alistair hadn't dropped me a message on LinkedIn 10 months after we'd met, and if that hadn't have happened, then we wouldn't be where we are. And he didn't know if I was going to say yes to starting this business, but he took a leap and just went with it, and I will be eternally and forever grateful for that. So I would encourage anyone with a seed to just jump and see what happens. And my flippant bit of advice is, please always send a note when you reach out to someone on LinkedIn, because I'll be honest, and if there's not a note there, I'm not connecting with you. I'm sorry, it's not happening.
Oh my goodness, now you're making me worried. I don't know if I sent a note, and now did you?
I'm sure you did.
Better double check.
Yeah.
That is probably the most profound feedback of the whole episode. So if people come away with anything, it's that.
It's so easy, honestly. Make it happen.
Amazing. Sophie, thank you so much for
Thank you.
this incredibly inspiring show today. I'm so excited for the future, and I look forward to someday hopefully flying on a plane.
Goodness, me too.
With severely less guilt, and
That's the goal.
Knowing that it all started with a LinkedIn connection request
That had a note on it. There we go. Thank you too. Thank you for doing this, because it's great to. It's awesome to have a platform to share this with.
Right.
So thank you.
It's an honor. It's an honor to have you on the show. So if people listening, if anyone wants to go check out Sophie's work, funnily enough, Sophie's on LinkedIn, and we'll link that in the show notes. And Carbon Neutral Fuels, that you can also follow the business on LinkedIn. Do you have a website yet, or
we do? Yeah, yes,
okay.
CNF.energy.
Brilliant. .energy, nice, very nice. Yeah, they got one for everyone now.
That's
great.
Really do.
If anything, that's a good one. That's a great one. Amazing. I thank you very much, Sophie, for being on the show.
Thank you.
We're so excited for your future. We'll have to have you back when, as things develop. Maybe the grand design's revisited.
My gosh, we actually need Kevin to come and open the facility, don't we?
Yeah.
Needs to happen.
Thank you, Sophie. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, James. Loved it.
Thank you. And thank you for listening or watching today's show. Honestly, it's wonderful to do these episodes, and I hope you've enjoyed today's show. If you have, please do tell anyone and everyone about today's show, and please do leave a comment, a review, 5 stars, whatever you like, to just show how much you've enjoyed it. So thank you. We really want Sophie's message to get out there far and wide. So thank you, and we'll catch you next time.